From an ancient land shaped by the oldest continuous culture on Earth to a thriving modern democracy, the story of Australia is one of endurance, discovery, conflict, and transformation. Long before European ships reached its shores, the Australian continent was home to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples for over 65,000 years, living in harmony with the environment, passing down complex knowledge systems, art, spirituality, and oral traditions that defined one of the most sophisticated hunter-gatherer societies in history. The land was their storybook, every river, rock, and star a chapter in the Dreamtime, the sacred narrative of creation and connection. Then, in 1770, British explorer Captain James Cook charted the eastern coast and claimed it for Britain, a decision that would change the continent forever. 18 years later, in 1788, the first fleet arrived at Botany Bay, carrying convicts, soldiers, and settlers to establish the penal colony of New South Wales. Life in the new colony was harsh. Unfamiliar climates, scarce resources, and deep cultural clashes marked the early years. As more ships arrived, the expansion displaced indigenous communities, bringing disease, violence, and loss of land, the devastating legacy of colonization that Australia continues to reckon with today. Yet amid hardship, settlers slowly transformed the landscape, building towns, farms, and a fledgling society on the edges of empire. By the mid-1800s, gold was discovered in New South Wales and Victoria, sparking the Australian gold rush that drew migrants from around the world and fueled economic boom, social tension, and dreams of independence. The colonies grew wealthier and more self-confident, developing their own governments, newspapers, and sense of identity distinct from Britain. By 1901, after decades of debate and vision, the 6 separate colonies united to form the Commonwealth of Australia, a federation with its own constitution, parliament, and national spirit. Though still loyal to the British Crown, Australia began to chart its own path. Its soldiers fought bravely in World War I, particularly in the Gallipoli Campaign of 1915, which, despite being a military failure, became a defining moment of courage and unity, the birth of the Anzac legend. Through the Great Depression and World War II, Australia matured into a confident democracy, strengthening ties with the United States and embracing new waves of immigrants from Europe and later Asia, transforming its culture into one of the world's most vibrant multicultural societies. The post-war decade saw rapid industrialization, suburban growth, and the rise of a distinct Australian identity, egalitarian, resilient, and deeply connected to the land and sea. In the 1960s and 70s, the nation began confronting its colonial past. The 1967 referendum recognized Aboriginal peoples in the census, and later landmark court cases like Mabo challenged the myth of terra nullius, restoring recognition of indigenous land rights. Politically, Australia navigated between tradition and progress, maintaining its monarchy while fostering an independent foreign policy. Its economy evolved from agriculture and mining to a dynamic blend of innovation, education, and environmental awareness. By the 21st century, cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane became global hubs, balancing natural beauty with modern ambition. Yet challenges remain. Debates over climate change, immigration, reconciliation with indigenous communities, and the future of the monarchy continue to shape the national conversation. Today, Australia stands as a prosperous democracy, a regional power in the Indo-Pacific, and a symbol of how a nation forged through hardship can redefine itself through unity, diversity, and hope. Its journey, from an ancient continent to a modern global voice, is a testament to the enduring spirit of its people, forever bound to the land they call home. As the 20th century unfolded, the newly federated Australia faced the challenge of defining what it meant to be an independent nation within the British Empire. The early decades were marked by optimism and ambition, new national institutions, railways connecting the coasts, and a belief in a fair go for all. Yet this progress was shadowed by restrictive policies such as the White Australia policy, which sought to preserve a European identity and excluded many non-European immigrants for decades. When World War I erupted, Australia's loyalty to Britain drew it into battle, and the courage of Australian troops at Gallipoli and on the Western Front became the foundation of national pride and the Anzac spirit, bravery, mateship, and sacrifice. The interwar years brought prosperity for some and hardship for others. The Great Depression hit hard, shaking confidence and deepening class divides. Then came World War II, a turning point that would redefine Australia's global role. When Japan advanced across the Pacific, for the first time the threat of invasion felt real. The fall of Singapore in 1942 shattered trust in British protection, prompting Prime Minister John Curtin to turn to the United States for alliance and defense. This moment marked the birth of a new strategic partnership that still defines Australia's foreign policy today. After the war, the nation embarked on massive reconstruction and immigration programs, populate or perish, as leaders called it. Millions of migrants from Europe arrived, building homes, roads, and industries, transforming a once isolated colony into a dynamic, multicultural democracy. The post-war decades saw rising living standards, the birth of iconic institutions like Qantas and the Snowy Mountains Hydro Scheme, and the rise of a confident middle class. Culturally, Australians embraced film, art, and sport, celebrating heroes from the cricket pitch to the stage. By the 1960s and 70s, the social revolution reached Australian shores. The Vietnam War, protests, and the women's rights movement stirred deep debates about justice, freedom, and national identity. In 1967, Australians overwhelmingly voted to include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the national census, a landmark step toward equality. Yet reconciliation remained an unfinished chapter. Politically, the 1970s brought turbulence and reform. Prime Minister Gough Whitlam's government expanded education, healthcare, and foreign engagement before being dismissed in 1975 in one of Australia's most dramatic political crises. The decades that followed saw modernization and global integration. Under leaders like Bob Hawke and Paul Keating, the economy was restructured, tariffs reduced, and Australia embraced Asia as a key partner rather than just looking to Britain. When Queen Elizabeth II visited, she was greeted warmly but amid growing discussions about becoming a republic, a debate that continues today. As the 21st century dawned, Australia emerged as one of the world's most prosperous nations, blessed with natural resources, a resilient economy, and a high quality of life. The Sydney 2000 Olympics showcased a confident, welcoming nation on the global stage. Yet challenges persisted: devastating bushfires, environmental concerns, and debates over immigration and national identity. The rise of China reshaped regional dynamics, testing Australia's balance between economic opportunity and strategic caution. Domestically, voices calling for truth-telling and reconciliation with Indigenous Australians grew stronger, leading to landmark national apologies and movements like the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Through it all, the spirit of innovation and fairness endured, from leading research and education to championing human rights and environmental protection. Today, Australia stands at a crossroads, proud of its heritage, rich in diversity, and committed to shaping a sustainable future in a rapidly changing world. Its story continues to evolve. A land once seen as remote now connected to every corner of the globe, still guided by that timeless idea of giving everyone a fair go and cherishing the freedom to call this vast, beautiful continent home. The dawn of the new millennium marked a new chapter in Australia's journey, one defined by prosperity, globalization, and reflection. The year 2000 began with triumph, the Sydney Olympics, where the world watched Australia shine as a vibrant, confident nation. It wasn't just sport. It was a statement that Australia had come of age, capable of uniting its diverse people under one flag, one story. But the new century also brought new challenges. In 2001, the Tampa affair and the September 11th attacks shifted global politics, and Australia found itself confronting difficult questions about immigration, security, and identity. The country joined its allies in Afghanistan and Iraq, marking a new era of military involvement far from home. Meanwhile, debates about asylum seekers and border protection ignited fierce national discussions that would shape Australian politics for decades. Economically, Australia entered a golden age of growth. Fueled by mining booms and exports to Asia, especially China, the nation's prosperity soared. Cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth expanded rapidly, becoming global centers of culture and commerce. But beneath the wealth, deeper issues simmered. Housing prices skyrocketed, environmental pressures mounted and rural communities struggled to keep pace. When bushfires ravaged vast landscapes, the nation was reminded of its fragility against nature's power. The 2009 Black Saturday fires left haunting memories, a stark warning about the realities of climate change in one of the world's driest continents. In politics, leadership became turbulent. The 2000s and 2010s saw a revolving door of prime ministers. From John Howard's long tenure to Kevin Rudd's optimism, Julia Gillard's groundbreaking leadership as Australia's first female prime minister, and the bitter political battles that followed. Yet amid the chaos, reforms continued. Education funding, healthcare improvements, and a growing focus on environmental sustainability. Australia also deepened its cultural transformation, embracing multiculturalism not just as policy but as identity. Immigrants from Asia, the Middle East, and Africa joined older communities from Europe to create one of the most diverse societies on Earth. Food, music, and festivals reflected a new Australian story, one that celebrated difference as strength. But one issue continued to challenge the nation's conscience: reconciliation with Indigenous Australians. In 2008, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd delivered a historic national apology to the stolen generations, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children taken from their families under past government policies. The speech brought many to tears and marked a step toward healing, but also reminded the nation that true equality remained unfinished business. Calls for constitutional recognition and a voice to Parliament grew louder, sparking passionate debate about justice, identity, and unity. As the 2020s began, Australia faced a world transformed. The devastating bushfires of 2019-2020 burned millions of hectares, a reminder of the urgent threat of climate change. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic, testing the resilience of communities and economies alike. Lockdowns, isolation, and economic strain challenged the lucky country myth. Yet once again, Australians adapted, showing unity and compassion in crisis. The government's handling of the pandemic drew both praise and criticism, but the spirit of helping one another never faded. Emerging from the crisis, Australia looked to the future, investing in technology, renewable energy, and regional partnerships. With growing strategic tensions in the Indo-Pacific, the AUKUS Security Pact with the United States and United Kingdom marked a return to strong defense alliances, balancing economic ties with China and shared democratic values with Western partners. Today, Australia stands as one of the world's most developed and democratic nations, a bridge between East and West, rooted in ancient cultures and modern innovation. Its challenges remain: reconciliation, climate, housing, and inequality. But its story is one of resilience and reinvention. From the dreamtime of the First Nations to the digital age of global connectivity, Australia's journey is far from over. It is a land of contrasts, deserts and cities, tradition and progress, history and hope. A place where every sunrise still whispers the same truth that has guided generations. This vast continent is not just a country, but a shared story of survival, courage, and belonging.